Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the lesson number 12 of the series of tutorial on how to build a premium theme for WordPress. Welcome again. In the previous two lessons, we created a custom section in the administration panel to activate a built-in contact form. And with this activation, we hooked an action for WordPress to create a custom post type for us to collect all the messages that a user will send by using the contact form that in the future we're gonna create when we're gonna build our front end. What we have to do now, we have to create a custom meta box to accept an input that usually is not a default input of WordPress. If we go inside this post that I created as a test, we can use the title of the post to collect the name of the user that is sending the email. We can use the body, the message, the standard visual editor of WordPress to collect the actual message that he's gonna send. And now we need a custom element. We need another field to collect the email. We want to save also that data. WordPress gives us the ability to create a custom meta box to create whatever data and save whatever data to all the posts or pages or custom post types that we want. So let's take a look on how to do it. Let's access our text editor and let's stay for now in the file custom-post-type.php because also the meta box, even if is not strictly related to the custom post type, this meta box is strictly related to the contact custom post type that I created. And also in this case, I don't want to create the action here. I don't want to add the action if the contact form is not active. So also in this case, I have to put the hook of the action inside the if statement to check if the user wants actually the contact form. So let's scroll down until the end of our code. Let's create a comment here and let's write contact meta boxes. Because maybe in the future we could extend, if you want, you could extend this functionality. You could extend the form by collecting the phone number or the business name or whatever other field you want to collect in your backend. You can totally do it with the same functionalities that we're going to take a look now, that we're going to use right now. So let's start by creating a custom function. Call, as usual, a unique name. So sunset underscore add underscore meta underscore box. This is pretty generic, so let's use sunset underscore contact underscore add meta box. Brackets, no parameter needs to be passed. Curly brackets, let's open the curly brackets, and inside here we can write the code to activate a custom meta box. To activate the custom meta box, we have to use a pre-built functionality of WordPress that, as usual, if you already notice right now, WordPress uses the function's name basically identical to the action that you want to achieve. So also in this case, it's going to be add meta box, because of course we want to create a meta box, so the function is called add meta box. Pretty straightforward. The first parameter is the string ID. Is really important because it's, as usual, the unique ID that we're going to use to update our meta box to retrieve whatever information is inside this meta box. So let's use this ID as contact underscore email. The title is the title that is going to appear in the actual box that is going to be generated inside our backend. So inside here, user email, not plural. The callback function, also this one really important, because without the callback function, we cannot generate any code. We cannot put any HTML. So the callback function has to be a unique callback function. And in this case, it's sunset underscore contact underscore email. The screen option gives us the ability to print a meta box inside whatever post, page, or custom post type we want to put our meta box. So in my case, I want this meta box inside the contact sunset custom post type, and I know that the actual ID of my custom post type is sunset contact, so I have to just print this one in the screen, sunset contact. We don't need any context, any priority, or any callback arguments for these meta box. In the future, we're going to take a look at what those options are needed for, but for now, these standard for attributes are more than enough to create a custom meta box. Let's save it. Let's put a semicolon at the end, of course, as usual. Let's not forget it. And this function is pretty much it. So now with this function, we activated the code of the meta box. Now we have to create the callback function to actually generate, as usual, the HTML that is going to be inside our administration panel. And as a generic rule, when we use a callback, especially when we start adding a lot of functions that they have the same name, this one is called contact, this one is sunset contact, so they're pretty similar. If it's a callback, you can put callback at the end of the name of the function. So you will know that all the callbacks function they finish with callbacks are related to an actual action or an actual hook of WordPress and are all callbacks function. So just to maintain a little bit of clarity while you read your own code or see if someone else is reading your code. So let's create this callback function by writing function, and let's copy paste the exact same name, brackets, and inside the brackets I want to pass the post variable that it's going to be automatically passed by the add meta box, and it's going to carry all the information related to which post is this meta box used for. So in my case is the custom post type sunset contact. So this post variable is going to have inside all the information, the ID, title, slug, whatever. We pretty much will use only the ID of the post, but we have to pass this variable inside the brackets in order to use it. Curly brackets to open the function, and inside here we can start writing a lot of code. And you will notice that to manage, update, save, and properly code a meta box, it requires a lot of code. But the good thing is that the code is always the same. So after you do the first meta box, you can reuse the code with a for each function to generate all sorts of type of meta boxes. So you don't have to rewrite the code multiple times, but bear with me. Let's take a look on how to do it, and let's learn how to use this amazing function of WordPress. So first of all, we have to use the wp_nonce_field. If you follow this series of tutorials since the beginning, you know that a nonce is a pre-built functionality of WordPress that generates a unique ID, a unique value, a unique string, like encoded string, to check if it's the action, whatever action of saving or deleting or updating your information is legit from a legit user inside your administration panel. This nonce is really important to avoid that someone else outside, maybe a hacker, someone is trying to hack your system and is trying to send information to update or to access your database. So this nonce is really important. So let's specify a bunch of options here, and the action is of course a unique action that we will use in the future to refer to our nonce. So in my case it's gonna be sunset underscore save underscore email underscore data. And here the string name, I can use usual sunset underscore meta underscore box underscore, let's use sunset underscore contact underscore email meta box nonce. And the last two parameters, we can leave it empty because we don't need to use it right now. We're going to take a look in the future how to use also the last two parameters. Let's keep going and let's collect the value, whatever value this meta box is going to have, with a unique variable. So let's create a variable called value. And inside here, we can use a function of WordPress to retrieve the value of a custom meta box. And the function is get underscore post underscore meta. And inside here, we have a bunch of options. Let's put a semicolon at the end. First, we have to specify which post ID we want to use to check our post meta. And of course, as I said before, we already have the post variable, and inside the post variable is stored the ID that we can access inside the object. So let's use post meta dash bigger than. So we have to use this little arrow that is standard of PHP to access an attribute inside an object array. So let's put ID, that is the unique attribute of the post. And inside here, we have to use a unique string key that we never used. So we have to specify a unique key that in the future we're gonna use to also update this meta box information. So in my case, I want to use, and as a strict rule for all the string value for our meta box, they have to start with an underscore before the actual name. So let's use the contact email underscore value underscore k. And the Boolean, we have to specify if this value is a single value or a multiple value. Maybe it's an array, or maybe it's a checkbox with multiple checklists. For now, for us, it's just a single value. So we have to specify through because it's a Boolean. So through, we're going to say to WordPress, this is just a single value. It's not an array of values or whatever. So value is a single string that we need to use. And now with a simple echo function, we can print whatever information we want inside our meta box. Let's create a label. And in order to maintain this tutorial as simple as possible, I'm going to use the exact HTML standard of WordPress. So I'm going to create a meta box that looks like a pre-built WordPress box, a pre-built WordPress function. So I'm not going to create a custom look for this box, but you can totally do it with by editing CSS and applying your own classes to these standard HTML strings. So let's create this label. Let's put a label 4, and let's put the ID has to be, of course, a unique ID. So I'm going to use sunset underscore contact underscore email underscore field. And as you notice here, that could be confusing because we are using a lot this sunset contact email. We have the sunset contact email callback. We have the sunset contact email meta box nonce. We have the sunset save email data, the unique string contact email value k, and now we have another ID. So we have a lot of different options, a lot of different IDs and keys. Unfortunately, this is how the meta box works, and we have to create all these different IDs and all these different fields to properly use the meta box. So if you get confused, try to, as I'm doing right now, try to put as an append every time you write a unique ID or a unique string of what is this string for. So in this case, this is a callback. Let's put callback at the end. This is a nonce. Let's put the nonce at the end. This is the value k, let's put value k. This is the field, let's put field. So even if you're using always sunset contact email, we can put as an append whatever type of string ID field we're using to try to keep everything as clear as possible. So let's close the echo with a semicolon. Inside here, we can put user email address, and let's close the label string, semicolon as I said before, and here we can echo again the actual input field. So let's write input type. I want this input to be email. We can use HTML5 to specify this input has to be an email, so it's gonna have its own validation even if we manually add something. If the email address is not correct, it's not a legit email address, the HTML5 field text type input type is gonna trigger an error. It's kind of like standard. You can put a standard text, but we can use HTML5 sometimes, not everywhere, but if we can use it, especially in the backend, it's a good thing. Let's put the ID, and the ID has to be identical of the ID that we specified here in the label. So it's sunset contact email field, and the name has to be identical to the ID. And the value, now we can put finally the value that we retrieved before the get post meta, the actual value key that is connected to our post. Of course, in the first case, in our case, it's going to be completely empty what we needed. Before printing the value, as usual here in a PHP function, we put single quote to interrupt the string of the echo. We put 2 dots to connect string and a variable. You should already know that if you're following my tutorial. But instead of just printing the value here, this value can contain some weird HTML stuff. We don't really know. It's related to a user input, so something that a user externally from our administration panel wrote inside this field. It's always better to escape the attribute with the pre-built functionality here to escape the attribute. So in this way, we're gonna sanitize a little bit this value, and we're gonna avoid to have bad surprises. As a last value, I'm gonna use a pre-built value of WordPress that is usual standard WordPress meta box input value, and it's the size of 25. So I'm specifying the size of this input field. Let's close the input with a / and this bigger than symbol and semicolon at the end. And we wrote the entire callback function to generate a nonce, retrieve the value that is saved inside this meta box, and printing the actual input of this meta box. Now what we have to do, we have to finally call the hook to activate this function and activate the actual add meta box. What I said before, I want the hook to be inside if contact it's equal 1. So if the contact form is actually active, I can use the action to activate my function to generate the meta box. So the usual hook is add action. And the name of the action that I want to use, and I have to use to trigger a meta box, is add _ meta _ boxes. Of course, as usual, the logic of WordPress is pretty straightforward. And inside here, as a string, as usual, I have to print. I have to put the function name that I want to call. So the sunset contact add meta box. Boom, save it. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh whatever page, and now we have the user email contact field. Here we have the user email address with, of course, nothing saved inside. We can style a little bit more this thing. We can put maybe column, a little bit of space, maybe write address in a proper way and just avoid spelling mistake. And let's go back here, refresh it, and now looks slightly better. So by default, WordPress is putting a new generated meta box at the end of whatever we have. So if we're using plugins or Yoast SEO plugin or whatever other, we have an excerpt here, your custom meta box is gonna appear by default always at the bottom, always at the center. But what if we want this on top of everything, or we want this on the sidebar? We can easily do it by using the last two options that I skipped previously for the add meta box function. So if you remember, the last two options were the context and the priority. The context is necessary to specify in which part of the page I want my meta box to be, and you have three options. So the first option is normal. And if we put normal as a context and we gonna take a look, we refresh it, of course, is normal. He's here because it's the normal, the standard status of the generation of WordPress. Where is this thing going to be print? If we want to put it on the side, the parameter that we can use as a context, of course, is side, and that is what I want to use. So if we refresh here, we're gonna notice that our user email input field, it just magically moved on the side. So we're gonna have everything here nicely organized, and that's what we wanted. We have the other parameter that we can specify, the sixth parameter, that is the priority. And the priority has four options: high, core, default, or low. So if we put, of course, the default is gonna appear wherever WordPress wants. If we put hi, and we save it and we take a look, refresh, you will notice that because we put hi, it's actually on top of everything. So by default, we can put, maybe this is an advanced position hi if I want the email to be right underneath the text. The title, I can put normal, but as I said before, I want to be on a side and on a default position. So let's put default, or we can avoid to specify whatever value because the default value of the meta box is actually default. So let's save it on the side. Let's refresh it and it's back in this position. So you can play with these settings and functionalities and see where you want your meta box to appear, in which position. So now, of course, if you write something like alex@something.com and we update, the post is updated with a whatever option, but here nothing gets updated. So we're losing, we're not maintaining whatever value because of course we didn't create the actual function to save our meta box. And if you remember here in the nonce field, we specified a unique function name that is the sunset save email data. So that's what we're gonna use to save our data. And because this is generic, I wanna actually rename this to sunset save contact underscore email data. So it's more obvious. That's what I'm doing. So let's copy this string that's specified here and let's create again a function with the same string. And inside here, we can put brackets. Inside the brackets, we can pass the post ID variable. Basically, the nonce will pass automatically to this string the post ID of whatever post we are updating. So it's pretty good. Curly brackets, open the curly brackets. And inside here, we have to do a lot of things. We have to check a lot of stuff. And it's gonna be kind of slightly confusing, but follow me. So first, we have to do a lot of security tests. So we have to check with an if statement, if exclamation mark to say that he's not, if is not is set. So if he's not set, the $post square brackets, we have to check if the nonce is not set. So this nonce that we're generating here, this is the unique string name of the nonce. If this is not set, so we are checking if whatever post message, when we save something, when we save a post, a page or whatever, WordPress is gonna send all this information with a post method of PHP. So inside this post method, we can retrieve if this nonce that we generated here exists. And this variable is checking if this nonce is not existing. Open the curly brackets, we can just put on hard return. So we're gonna stop the function. If this meta box, the nonce meta box doesn't exist, just stop the function with a return. So we will avoid to save whatever information to update our post if this nonce, it doesn't exist. So it means that the action wasn't actually launched by an administrator. The other check, oops, not a single quote. The other check that I want to do is if the nonce is valid. So I have to put another if exclamation mark to revert, of course, if it's not valid. And we can use a pre-built function of WordPress that checks automatically for us if the actual nonce that has been generated here is a valid nonce generated by WordPress and not generated manually by an hacker or another user. So let's use this function called wp_verify_nonce. And inside here, we have to specify two parameters. The actual nonce that is exactly identical to this one, so the post nonce that is passing. The second value is the actual function that is saving my meta box. So is the name of this very own function. Let's put it here. And of course, also if the WP verify nonce returns false, so is not true, let's put a hard return and let's stop this function, this saving function to be triggered. The other check that I want to do, I want to verify if this is an autosave or it's a manual save. Because if you know WordPress, sometimes while you're editing a blog post, if you spend a lot of time here and you write stuff, WordPress sometimes will you will notice maybe a little icon that it's saving the draft. So for us, it's saving multiple revisions of the same post. This is really useful, but maybe for this email, we don't want to actually save this information if it's an autosave, if it's not something that the user is actually clicking on the save button. So we can check if is defined, and the global variable, it's a global value specified by WordPress at the beginning. This global variable is doing underscore autosave, and double ampersand is doing autosave is actually specified, it actually exists. So if it's defined and it's something here, so it's not false, it's not like completely empty, we have to return it. So it means that if WordPress is doing the autosave and it's saving by itself the information, we don't want to save the meta box, so return it. Of course, you can totally remove this one if you want also the meta box to be saved automatically with the autosave, but as a safety precaution, it's better to avoid it. The other check, we have to, before saving, we have another couple of checks. So we have to check if the user has the actual permission to write, to update, and to change the options or whatever information inside this meta box. So let's check for user's permission with if exclamation mark as usual to check if is not. We can check with a pre-made function of WordPress if a user, the current user, has the ability, the capability of editing a post. So we can check it with a function called current, current underscore user underscore can. So if the user can, as a first parameter, edit underscore the post, and the second parameter has to be the post ID that we're passing. So we're checking if the user can edit this post, and we're putting the exclamation mark to say if the user cannot edit this post. Also in this case, let's put on hard return to fulfill this saving application. Okay, now what we have to do, finally, we have to retrieve the data that has been passed. So also in this case, we have to put if is set. So we're checking again inside the post variable of PHP if it's set our field, whatever field we're putting here, and the field has to be the exact same ID that is specified in the input, or the ID or the name. These two parameters should be always identical. So let's grab the name, ID, whatever is the same. So if is not set this thing, we can also in this way return and avoid to trigger whatever function we're gonna trigger finally right now. So we're checking if the actual saving of the post is passing this contact email field. If it's not passing, we don't have to trigger the option to save it, so we are pretty good. Now we checked with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options, all the pretty standard safety precaution of WordPress. We checked if the meta box exists, if the nonce exists, if it's doing an autosave, if the user has the capability to do that, and if we actually have the value. So if we have the post value of this custom meta box. Now we can finally create a variable called my underscore data, or whatever name you want to give to this variable. And we can collect this post contact email field. Before collecting though, and semicolon at the end, maybe let's put the $. Before collecting, before saving and updating the post, I want to sanitize this text field. So let's use the pre-built function of WordPress called sanitize underscore text underscore field. Put it here. Let's put inside the brackets. So we are pretty good with whatever information the user is gonna input. Of course, we're gonna do some check also in the front end to avoid that the user is putting some malevolent code inside our input field. But even if we are checking this, let's always sanitize the text field to be sure that nothing wrong is gonna be saved inside our database. And finally, we can call the function called update underscore post underscore meta. And the update underscore meta accepts 4 variables. We have to use just 3 variables. So the last one, we don't need it. The first is the post ID, that if you know, we actually have it inside here. So let's specify the post ID. So update the data on this post ID. We need to specify the key of whatever data we created. So we actually need the meta box key, the get post meta that we created here. So the contact email value key, because we're gonna store this field inside this meta key. So we're gonna save this meta key as a string, and then we have to pass the value that we wanna save. That in my case is the variable my data that contains the email information, and semicolon at the end. Finally, now we have to create a hook to save the post. And also in this case, I want to put this action inside the if statement here to be sure that this action is not going to be useful or usable if the contact form is not active. So let's call add action, and is action is gonna be triggered during the save underscore post timing of WordPress, and the action that I want to call, of course, is the saving function that I just created, the sunset save. Put it here as a string, saves contact email data, and semicolon at the end. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh it. Let's write alex at something.com update, and the post as updated, and we have finally the email here. So if we refresh, we go back here, we go back inside, we have the information here. So we finally, after all these checks, created a meta box with a custom value, a custom information, and we are storing this meta box with this post. So this meta box belongs to this post. So what I want to do now to conclude, I want to print the email information, the email address here in the column. To do that, it's pretty simple. I need just basically to reuse this code that I'm using to retrieve the data. So let's copy these and let's go in the section that I use to customize the column that are appearing in my main page of the messages custom post type. So instead here, in the case of the email, instead of echoing the email address, I can just create a variable called email equal get post meta. Instead of post ID inside here, I have already the ID printed safely here. So let's replace this variable. This is the actual value key, and I have the truth to specify that it's a single, and then I can finally safely echo this variable. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel, refresh it, and we have the email here. If we want also, we have full control here to put whatever HTML string to make this email clickable. So ahref equal mail to column. Let's reuse the email. Let's close the a tag. Let's put a dot to connect the string, dot single quote, and close the a tag. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel, refresh it, and now this one is linked that it's connected directly to the email. So if we click here, it's gonna open our email software, email client, with this email already input in the recipient field. And of course, if I create a new one and I put like maybe Carl and I said awful tutorial, this was too long. I'm a douche, so this one is a douche at douche.com. I don't know if this actual this actual website exists. I think so, but publish it. We go back in our, of course, everything is properly saved. We go back in our messages. And of course, here we have different information, and we have the email of our douche Carl that wrote even incorrectly spelled awful. So awful. It's right now. I'm sorry guys, I don't know how to write anymore. Anyway, you notice here we created a custom meta box to store our email address, and we're printing this custom meta box outside. So now you know, you have the knowledge to create inside your custom post type whatever information you want to save and you want to give the user the ability to save, and then you can use this information and print it also as columns outside, so you can completely customize the experience of your custom post type. So it's pretty much it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed. As usual, if you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you really like my tutorial and you would like to see more video, more content, better content for you, always free, please spend a couple of minutes to take a look at my support page to check all the different ways that you can use to support me. Thank you again, guys. And as usual, until the next lesson, happy coding.